On August 9, 2022, U.S. President Joe Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act that was passed by the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives at the end of July. The act provides significant funding incentives for the American semiconductor industry and grants for scientific research. The bill explicitly prohibits companies receiving U.S. subsidies from building or expanding semiconductor plants in mainland China for the next 10 years. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has reacted strongly to this bill. At the same time, the Chinese authorities have launched a massive storm of investigations into their domestic chip industry, sending industry leaders into a state of panic. A week ago, we reported on a series of investigations into China's chip industry, in which several chip industry leaders were abruptly taken away by the CCP Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, CCDI, for investigation and are now unaccounted for. The storm isn't stopping there. On August 9th, according to the website of the State Supervision Commission of the CCDI, 3 senior executives of China's chip industry and Huaxin Investment Management Company were added to the investigation list. Among them, 2 party members are under investigation by the CCDI, and 1 non-party member is under investigation by the Beijing Municipal Supervisory Committee. Since mid-July, together with these 3 individuals, a total of 9 bigwigs in China's chip industry have been officially notified of an investigation, or rumored to be investigated. They include the former Minister of Industry and Information Technology, the former Director General of the Department of Electronic Information of China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, and the General Manager of the National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, known as the Chip Fund. In addition, the former president of Huaxin Investment Management Company, which manages the Chip Fund, and the chairman and former president of Tsinghua Unigroup are also under investigation. As can be seen, the people currently under investigation are closely associated with the Chip Fund. In 2014, the Chinese government set up the National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund Company, known as the National Fund, or Big Fund. By 2022, the investment scale of the 2 phases of the Big Fund was approximately US $47.3 billion. If the leverage ratio of 1:5 is applied, the National Big Fund would bring in more than US $240 billion in capital. The operation of the Big Fund is conducted mainly behind the scenes and is not open to the public. Bloomberg quoted sources as saying that when top Chinese officials reviewed reports on the semiconductor industry in July, they found that the industry's technological progress may have been exaggerated and that many investments have not borne fruit. Over the past decade, the CCP has invested hundreds of billions of US dollars in capital. Plus, the US government has continued to tighten restrictions on technology. Together, these 2 things have infuriated top Communist Party officials.
We are the United States of America, a singular place of possibilities. I'm not going to go sign the CHIPS and Science Act, and once again, I promise you, we're leading the world again for the next decades. Thank you.
The so-called CHIPS and Science Act is purportedly aimed at bolstering the competitive edge of the U.S.'s sci-tech and chip industries. However, certain provisions in the Act restrain normal sci-tech cooperation between China and the U.S. China is firmly against it. Obviously, the U.S. push for the CHIPS Act has exerted tremendous political pressure on CCP decision-makers at the highest levels due to the U.S.-China rivalry. Given the lack of expected returns on such a massive investment by China's National Fund and the need for accountability at the top, it is only a matter of time before a reckoning comes in the form of an anti-corruption campaign. Sources say that in early July of 2022, CCP leader Xi Jinping had asked, "Why is the IC still facing a bottleneck after 8 years of investment of 200 billion RMB?" The new U.S. bill can be seen as one of the driving factors for China's anti-corruption campaign in the chip industry. The other factor is related to the storm of rotten-tail buildings happening in China. National efforts have been thrown into the development of the chip industry by the CCP regime in recent years, but until now, China has relied on imports for its annual demand for semiconductors that are worth US $155 billion. Despite the extensive efforts of China's national research institutes and others in lithography, the lithography is still dominated by Netherlands-based ASML, and Japan still controls the supply of key technologies such as photoresists. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's administration launched a series of investigations and sanctions against the CCP for stealing U.S. technology. The Biden administration has followed this strategy and asked allies to join the technology containment. Under American sanctions, China has no access to EUV manufacturing equipment that's needed to produce the high-end chips and lacks advanced design software. China's current level is at 14 nanometers with a generation gap of 2 to 3 generations from the international leaders. This July, news broke that China's largest chipmaker, SMIC, was alleged to have produced and shipped 7-nanometer chips in 2021, seemingly breaking through U.S. sanctions, but was suspected of copying TSMC technology. What is odd is that the Chinese side has kept an extremely low profile. SMIC went from the 14-nanometer process, skipped 12 and 10 nanometers, and went directly to the 7-nanometer process. No one knows what happened in between. According to the director of the Division of Defense Strategy and Resources of the Institute for National Defense and Security Research in Taiwan, the chip's performance cannot be compared to Taiwan's TSMC, especially since it is far from true commercial reliability, and Taiwan should strengthen its defense against the CCP's theft of technology. SMIC's big leap forward in the manufacturing process appears to be exceptionally low-key, with no mention of 7-nanometer on its official website nor its official documents. It has remained silent even when pressed repeatedly by foreign investors. Searches of China's senior official media such as CCTV, Xinhua, and People's Daily Online with the keyword SMIC shows no relevant coverage. Given the CCP's big hype, it's bizarre that the breakthrough of SMIC, especially the breakthrough of U.S. sanctions, is only publicized by overseas pro-communist media. Now we return to the Communist Party's anti-corruption storm in the chip industry. Under China's top-down chip drive, some 15,700 semiconductor companies were registered between January and May 2021, more than 3 times the number of the previous year. Despite such significant financial resources from the central government, China hasn't been able to achieve any significant results. Let's break down one of the companies being investigated, Tsinghua Unigroup. It can reveal some of the context around why China's chip industry has fallen behind. Zhao Weiguo, the former chairman of Tsinghua Unigroup, was taken away from his Beijing residence by the authorities at the end of July for investigation and is still unreachable to this day. In the last episode, we analyzed the bankruptcy of Tsinghua Unigroup. In this episode, we will explain how China's real estate economy is bundled with the chip industry, and how the shattering of the real estate bubble has destroyed China's dream of chip autonomy. Tsinghua Unigroup, known as the largest IC company in China, once threatened to acquire TSMC and MediaTek. But on July 9, 2021, it declared bankruptcy and restructuring after only 7 years of glamour. In 2014, 6 months after the establishment of the Big Chip Fund, the fund's first large-scale investment was in Tsinghua Unigroup. Since 2014, Tsinghua Unigroup has been expanding its territory with a major mergers and acquisitions strategy, acquiring 2 IC design vendors, Spreadtrum and RDA. The company took a stake in hard disk drive manufacturer Western Digital Corporation, merging with storage flash memory maker SanDisk and acquiring the heavyweight Micron, spending US $9 billion on investments in just 2 years. It was also rumored that it wanted to take a stake in the Taiwan-based packaging and testing factories to build a vertical industry gradually. As the former boss of Tsinghua Unigroup, Zhao Weiguo, who is now under investigation, used to make a fortune in real estate. In 2005, he returned to his hometown of Xinjiang to invest in real estate. With a capital of $150,000, he obtained a return of $670 million, a profit of 4,500 times. In his view, making money in the real estate industry was as fast as printing money. Therefore, Tsinghua Unigroup had a huge real estate sector in its organization. In the name of building technology projects, it acquired land in first and second-tier cities such as Suzhou, Beijing, Nanjing, Chengdu, Wuhan, and Xiamen. Most of the more than 173 hectares of land acquired by Tsinghua Unigroup were projects in which industrial parks and residential buildings were tied closely together. The state-owned chip company last appeared in the land market in December 2019, when it snapped up a prime land parcel in western Beijing for about $980 million US. However, in August 2020, the real estate regulation initiated by the central government led to the rapid cooling of the real estate industry in China, which also led to the collapse of Tsinghua Unigroup's real estate sector and the rupture of its capital chain. Chinese media reported that Tsinghua Unigroup got a large piece of land in Chengdu, Sichuan province, and held a grand opening ceremony in April 2019. The total area of the industrial and commercial parts of the site was about 1,468,000 square meters, accounting for more than 55%, while the remaining 45% was residential. In February 2021, the residential project here came to a complete halt. So far, the project is still under suspension, and there is no definite date when it can be resumed. According to the financial report, as of the end of the third quarter of 2020, Tsinghua Unigroup had total assets of approximately US $44.7 billion and total liabilities of US $31.3 billion, while net cash flow from operating activities for the same period was only US $150 million. On July 9, 2021, Tsinghua Unigroup announced its bankruptcy and restructuring, with a Beijing-based company taking over 100% of Tsinghua Unigroup's shares. As mentioned earlier, China's Big Chip Fund has been closely linked with Tsinghua Unigroup since its establishment. The bankruptcy of Tsinghua Unigroup is likely to have drawn the attention of the CCP's top brass. At this point in time, the U.S. is advancing a chip bill aimed at revitalizing the U.S. chip manufacturing industry and countering China, which eventually led to the Chinese authorities' determination to investigate internal corruption in a big way. Because semiconductors are an important battleground in the U.S.-China tech war, chips are the brains of electronic devices, and chips are a must in everything from smartphones to laptops to data centers. Chips also play a vital role in cutting-edge weapons systems. The $280 billion CHIPS and Science Act, passed after more than a year of congressional work and numerous amendments, marked a rare display of bipartisan cooperation in the U.S. Both sides see the bill as critical to countering Beijing's economic coercion to win the economic competition with China and strengthen national security. The bill includes $52 billion worth of incentives for semiconductor or chip makers to build domestic semiconductor factories, as well as more than $80 billion in funding authorized by the National Science Foundation to support innovation and research over 5 years. The White House said the act was a solution to the supply chain challenges exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, during which a global shortage of chips caused delays in the production of automobiles and electronics, covering goods ranging from cars to cell phones to weapons.
It used to be, in the 90s, that the U.S. manufactured 37% of the world's chips. Today it's down to 12%. So the problem is, how do we go create an economic situation, an economic model that brings manufacturing back to the U.S.? And that's what the CHIPS bill is to do, is to close the global competitiveness to make manufacturing a reality back onshore in the U.S. And Global Foundries, once the CHIPS bill is funded, at this very facility we're having this discussion at today, we'll be expanding our capability to create more chips in the U.S.
Of particular concern to the outside world is that the text of the new bill states that chip companies that set up factories in the U.S. won't be able to expand chip production in China or other countries of concern such as Russia in the next 10 years if they receive subsidies from the U.S. government. Bloomberg reported that the bill sets a static limit of 28 nanometers, meaning that subsidy recipients cannot produce any chips smaller and more advanced in China than that size. 28 nanometer chip technology is from a couple of generations ago and well below the cutting edge of semiconductor technology, but they are still widely used in products including cars and smartphones. The bill's ban also covers logic and memory chips. On August 9th, the White House said many companies spurred by the CHIPS Act announced more than $44 billion in new semiconductor manufacturing investments. Of that, $40 billion came from investments in memory chip manufacturing. The White House said the company's initiatives would create 8,000 new jobs and increase the market share of U.S. memory chip production from 2 to 10%. Some analysts say the terms of the new U.S. bill have created a minefield for U.S. companies that will likely force them to choose between the U.S. and China, and that these restrictions could be a prelude to more stringent foreign investment scrutiny of chip makers. The U.S. usually plays a leading role among its allies. When the U.S. assumes this stance, Beijing's dream of building the chip will be even tougher to achieve. We concurred to accelerate the Japan-U.S. joint development of the next-generation semiconductors. Japan will quickly move to action. Japan's wisdom will be collected from AIST, Riken, and the University of Tokyo on research on next-generation semiconductor research. The decision was made to launch a new R&D organization. It will be open to overseas, to businesses and research institutes. It will be an international joint research hub. We are determined to collect the strength of Japan's science and technology-based nation and build cooperation between Japan and the U.S. and among like-minded countries.
We address the People's Republic of China and how its coercive economic practices go against an open, inclusive, rules-based international economic order that gives all countries a chance to participate, to compete, and to grow.
On August 3rd, the Financial Times reported that a former Korean economic official who served as South Korea's trade minister until May 2022 said that the readjustment of Korean chipmakers' strategy for the US and China has begun. The report said that according to people familiar with the views of the two companies, the provisions in the CHIPS Act have caused Samsung and SK hynix to reconsider their business in China. A senior South Korean official added that several of South Korea's investments in Chinese chip manufacturing could be dropped as time passes. At the same time, Taiwan is seeking to work more closely with the U.S. in the face of escalating threats from the CCP. Taiwan is a global center for advanced semiconductor manufacturing. Taiwan-based TSMC and UMC are the world's two largest chip foundries, supplying 60% of the world's chips. Taiwan's Hanhai Group is the world's largest contract electronics manufacturer and China's largest private sector employer, with 75% of its production capacity currently located in mainland China. In July this year, Hanhai Group announced an investment of about US $790 million, making it the second largest shareholder of Tsinghua Unigroup. In recent years, Hanhai has been actively cultivating its semiconductor business. It bought Tsinghua Unigroup shares mainly because of its two companies, Yangtze Memory Technology Corporation and Unisoc, which is a Chinese fabless semiconductor company that produces chipsets for mobile phones. It also set its eyes on the potential of China's electric vehicle market, which accounts for more than 50% of the world's electric vehicle sales, and the annual growth of electric vehicle sales in China in 2021 was 209%. On July 13th, the new chairman of Tsinghua Unigroup, Bin Li, issued an open letter to his staff confirming that Hanhai will soon take a stake in Tsinghua Unigroup. The new chairman mentioned that the core technology of many of the products of Tsinghua Unigroup still rely on imports. Future growth will require organizing the elements of the entire industrial chain, such as design, manufacturing, packaging and testing, materials, equipment, and software. It would also require introducing and absorbing innovative resources. While insisting on independent research and development, the enterprise needs to participate in international competition actively and fully integrate into the global industrial chain. The deal triggered a warning from the Investment Commission of Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs, which said that Hanhai had completed the investment without prior approval, violating the relevant regulations of the Investment Commission, and could be fined up to about US $832,000. Previously, many analysts warned that the CCP has been playing catch-up with semiconductor technology, and the biggest impact of the acquisition of Tsinghua Unigroup by Hanhai is to attract Taiwan's talents to China. If the advantage of the semiconductor industry is reversed in the future, it will be quite detrimental to Taiwan. The Financial Times said that officials in the Republic of China familiar with the matter and those with knowledge of the internal situation of Hanhai said that national security officials are already examining the case. Taiwan officials said, "With the passage of the CHIPS Act, Washington is accelerating its pace to strengthen domestic semiconductor manufacturing and working with allies and partners to control the flow of technology to China, and we must be careful where we stand."